Hey everyone, it's Randall. I'm here editing the rest of my Australian wildlife footage together. So we just posted episode 1. It was a story about the reptile pet hobby in Australia, right? So I did an interview with Max Jackson from Australian Wildlife Encounters. I interviewed him for like 10 minutes. Yeah, I interviewed him for like 10 minutes and we talked about a lot of stuff from like captive bred to wild animals. We talked about the stigma that the hobby faces in general. So as a former reptile keeper myself, I really resonated with what he shared, and I think it was such a waste that I really couldn't put that entire interview in that Dragon Tales episode. So I'm going to be posting that full interview right here, right now, and maybe you guys can take a look if you want to know more about the reptile pet hobby and how it operates in Australia, pretty much how it operates in different parts of the world as well. And I hope you all enjoy. If anything, it will at least buy me some time until I'm done with episode 2. So take care.
So my name is Max Jackson. I am a reptile keeper and tour guide over in Australia. I currently live in Sunshine Coast in Australia. And I own a company called Australian Wildlife Encounters. So we offer Australia-wide tours targeting reptiles, birds, mammals, all kinds of wildlife. And then we also offer venomous snake handling courses as well. So we teach all the local snake catchers, all of the local wildlife authorities, we teach them how to handle snakes. As well as keepers that are looking at getting into venomous keeping, we teach them how to handle their venomous snakes too. So behind me here, you see we've got a pretty large collection of snakes. They kind of vary from a variety of different python species, but predominantly they're elapids, so they're venomous species. Generally, most of them will rank in the top 10. We do also have the top number 3 here as well. We've got the inland taipan, the eastern brown, and the coastal taipan. Which is this one here behind me. These guys are the 3 most venomous snakes in the world, so they're part of my collection too, and we use them for our handling courses. So there's a bit of a stigma about keeping reptiles as pets. In Australia, it's a bit more common for people to keep reptiles as pets, but there is a stigma, and a lot of that stigma comes from taking animals from the wild. Thankfully in Australia, it's very heavily regulated, and there's very few people that actually go out there and do it. So the stigma in Australia isn't too bad, but I think for anyone that's thinking about keeping reptiles, don't let the stigma about it kind of unnerve you. I think you can learn a lot from these guys. I've learned so much from just watching and feeding, and so much of their behaviour just from keeping them. So it's got a good purpose. As long as you're keeping them well and you're doing everything legally, there's no reason that the stigma should annoy you. So being captive bred, these guys obviously are a little bit more placid in nature than some of the ones that you'll get out in the wild. They tend to often be a bit healthier. They get fed every week, so that keeps them nice and fit. The elapids that we've got, so our venomous species that we've got here, they still have got a bit of fire about them. I don't really handle them or anything like that, so when they come out, they do still act quite naturally. But the pythons that are just used to being handled and kind of know that we're not a threat, they're definitely significantly more placid in captivity. Generally though, you can get some pretty fiery ones. I think that reptiles are a very easy pet to keep. They are quite simplistic, but they do require a lot of attention. So there is a bit of a stigma as well about people that are keeping pets in general, whether it be reptiles or other animals, that these animals belong in the wild. And definitely they do, and they shouldn't be taken out of the wild, but there's a captive trade of pets available now, and by accessing that captive trade, what you're doing is you're kind of encouraging people to learn about wild species, which can only really help them in nature. If someone's got a pet worm python and then they hear that worm pythons are endangered and they need conserving, all of a sudden they've got an emotional attachment to this wild species that then they can support. So I think keeping pet reptiles in captivity has got a massive conservation value for the wild ones as well, just by inspiring that generation. It's not like this individual supporting the population, but just by showing people giving people access to seeing these snakes and giving people the opportunity to encounter them. That's what kind of inspires that kind of love for them. And once you love something, then you start wanting to conserve it. So that's probably how it generally translates into wild conservation. I'd say actually what I do learn from my snake courses a lot is that most people are killing snakes with shovels and stuff because they're scared of them and they don't understand them. So one of the big things that we like to do at Australian Wildlife Encounters is run the venomous snake handling courses. And we do get people in professional industries such as snake catchers and wildlife authorities coming to do those courses. But we're also getting lots of farmers and people who are previously scared of snakes and would previously go and grab a shovel and go kill the snakes if they found on their property. Now after doing our courses, they now are a bit more comfortable with them, they know the IDs and they can actually catch and relocate them themselves. So that way you're saving those individual species just from the people who just kill them out of fear without understanding them.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of teach people means that they understand them and then they fear them less. So I think anyone who loves wildlife, if you ask them why they love wildlife or how they got into it, they're going to have a story about the first time they met a snake or the first time they met an elephant or that first kind of love of interaction for animals. And it definitely promotes that by giving people access to being able to view and interact with an animal. It's what kind of encourages that initial passion, that initial really good experience that then all of a sudden becomes that person's focus. And I know it happened for myself. My first interaction was with a carpet python at the back of my house when I was only 9. And yeah, watched it for about an hour, fell in love with snakes, and my whole life changed since. So the captive trade is a really, really good opportunity to allow that. We can get people, not everyone can just go out and go see a weber python in the wild in order to kind of fall in love with it, but we give people the opportunity to see those animals in a controlled environment where they can actually experience them. They probably wouldn't have otherwise ever seen the species, but it allows them to kind of get to know them, hopefully inspire a bit of passion and get some love for the animal, and that translates across to then having someone who cares about the environment, cares about the wildlife, and all we need is basically a society where everyone does care about that, and then we're going to end up moving forward pretty successfully. Yeah, I think that people in pet trade should definitely, people in captive trade should be working together with the authorities. The authorities do some amazing work for sure, because there is a massive poaching issue with reptiles and it needs to be discouraged. So all the work they do there is super, super important, because I really, really have a lot of anger for anyone who does take reptiles from the wild. But they do need to understand that that doesn't translate to every single person that keeps reptiles. There's so many people, and the majority of people in the industry are in the industry because they love the animals and they want to kind of do the right thing by them and do everything as legally as they can. And then there's just a small percentage that are going out and poaching them from the wild or taking them from places, or just basically taking bad care of them. And then they're the ones that the authorities will target. But that's good that they're targeting them, but they do need to understand there's a small population of a bigger group of people, and generally speaking, most people that are in the industry are trying to do the right thing.
Right, thanks guys for playing. Let's get out and get some pilots.
No worries, sounds good, mate.